Okay, so I wanted to cover this particular game from my undefeated LobsterCon run. I feel like this game is very good to talk about a bunch of learnings I had, and it's like very interesting. So I'll put the original stream link in the bottom, but if you also want to learn more about the event itself, I hope my other video will be up soon. If not, there will be another video to cover LobsterCon itself. So let's dive into the game. Whoop. All right. So for people who don't know, the deck's called Andy's Cards, but really I borrowed this deck from my friend Andy, and it's mono blue tide. It's a control deck that plays Parallax Tide with Stifle or Chain of Vapor to exile my opponent's lands, and my opponent is on blue red knot or Stifle knot. So you play Phyrexian Dreadnought, Stifle to get a 12/12, but you can also play Fling to fling the Dreadnought. So I don't really know at this point what my opponent's on. And at this point, I know what they're on immediately. I know turn one land important already puts them into probably Stifle Knot. I don't know exactly what pairing. It could also be Gat, like Growatog, but I don't think so. If it's Gat, I would assume that you play like Gemstone or something like that to have other colors. But essentially, I know it's some sort of like lean deck with Portent, right? I guess potentially like Landstill as well. I don't know if Landstill plays it. I'm not so I'm like kind of 60% sure this is Stifle Knot already. And then here we go. We pick a Powder Keg, and this one took me a while to think about. So let's you can see me thinking. The thought here is that because I read that they are Stifle Knot, I play Powder Keg here. So Powder Keg, for people who don't know, on the upkeep, they're reading it, puts a counter on it, and then you can tap to sacrifice it to destroy all creatures and artifacts, I believe, of that mana value. So I thought about mana holding up for Mana Leak or Powder Keg here, because if I read that they are Stifle Knot, they tapped out, this is the best spot to jam through a Powder Keg. But if they foil me here, and then go Stifle Knot, I lose the game. So actually that decision took me a hot minute to think about, but I thought this was like a good use of my mana, and also I wasn't exactly sure they're on Stifle Knot, and if I lose to foil, I lose to foil, right? So me jamming Powder Keg here was like, I think the best time to put it, and makes it very difficult for them. It doesn't mean that they can't lose to it, because they do play main deck Stifle. So what they could do is land, like they could Vision Charm or something, right? Like they could Vision Charm their Dreadnought in response to me cracking it. They can Stifle my Powder Keg. So they're not completely safe, but this was like a good time to ram it through. And you can see that I have a Mana Leak. What else do I have? I have a Stifle. I think that's an AK. And a counter spell, right? So we're pretty good, but what we want to do is we want to like get lands, because this game is decided by who has more lands. They are a leaner deck, and essentially what we want to do is have more lands than they do, so we can take more actions than they do. As soon as we have more lands, they generally like have a much harder time to beat us, especially game one, without their red blast. So resolve AK, hit that land. Hopefully, I think I hit it. Draw, yes, and then pass. So that's a Nev disc. So Nev disc I thought about could be good. There's an impulse from them. They're probably digging for lands themselves. As I said, this matchup's really dictated by the amount of lands, right? Because what they need is they need to go like Stifle Knot, and then also like hold up mana to protect it, right? Because I assume like they don't know I'm on Tide. No one knows I'm on Tide, or no one really knows what the deck does. But they can assume that it's like some sort of control deck because of Fairy Conclave turn one. So here is a mountain, so they hit their land, and then we'll see what happens. But pretty easy game so far. Like, we're here just to hit lands, right? It's a little annoying that we're stuck on 3 because we have like Mana Leak and Counterspell, but we hit our land drop, so draw go. The longer this game goes where they don't hit their lands, the better it is for us. So here's a Portent. They also missed their Portent trigger. And I did not remind them about it. I was like being very sweaty here. Well, here's like one of the learnings I had that helps me like play better is someone on Twitter told me like what made them play better was assume every single game is like the finals of like a pro tour, right? You have to stop engaging the game casually and just take every single game you play to that like rigor and that like focus, right? So it sounds like, I guess, really intense, but it helps me. Like every game I play, I try and bring the exact same level of focus and his intensity to it. So I'm not gonna give them their beneficial trigger here. So horn, they shuffle, so I assume they don't see any lands, and like we both know what this game is. They know that they need lands. We both know they're trying to stick the dreadnought, and that powder keg is gonna make it very difficult to do that. And as long as like I'm not like discarding cards, then we're good. So I think that's another powder keg. So the other powder keg's interesting. I could have played the powder keg there, just to spend my mana a little bit better. But I figured like there's no pressure. I don't want them to know a second powder keg. There's no reason for us to reveal that information right now. And I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think it's like up to them to start doing something. But they're not hitting the lands. So as I said, play it super patiently. Also got a haircut for everyone watching. So we have to do content because my hair won't be this nice every other time. Bolt. All right, this bolt's very interesting. I thought like I did that really quickly, but I thought for a half second, like microsecond, to counter that bolt. So the reason why the bolt is important in this matchup is because as soon as we go under 12, they can go Dreadnought Fling, kill us, right? So every single burn spell they cast now is somewhat important because we have to make sure we never go under that threshold of being killed by the Fling. So pass and pitch the Nev Disc. So Nev Disc is never getting resolved here. They have their own counter spells, and we're never gonna be able to put like tap out 4 at the moment with like this amount of lands. So I feel like a very easy decision to make here. Especially that we have another powder keg. But yeah, like this kind of matchup, just like play super patiently, just see what happens. I used to be very afraid of like this kind of game, of like being very patient and just passing back and forth. But now it's just like, they're not killing us anytime soon. So we hit our land drop, perfect, pass the turn. The person who flinches first, like, will lose this game, and I have no reason to flinch. There's nothing to there's nothing for me to put down. Like, I'm not going to animate the Conclave and put myself down to 2 of my mana, especially with the deck with bolts and fire ices. So here's a fire ice. So here I'm thinking a little bit. So this will put me down to 15, and because we're starting to discard, I decide to jam the mana leak here because might as well not discard it. We hit a quicksand, so quicksand will kill a creature. Give us attacking creature -1/-2. Not that useful in this matchup, but will come up later, which is kind of very funny. But we're happy to hit more lands. I'm like a little sick, so sorry if I sound congested. Here's a Grim Lavamancer. This one took a little bit of thinkies, because the Grim Lavamancer, the more time I give it, the more damage I'm going to take, right? Like, I don't want to get shocked. As I said, I don't want to go under 12. So here, I actually crack the powder keg, because I don't really want to use my other spells for it. Like, I have many ample ways to answer the Stifle Knot if they try for it. And also look at, like, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 mana to their 4, right? So here, we play the second powder keg, and if they want to fight over it, they can. Like, either we let them resolve it. Like, this powder keg is either a duress to discard a counter spell, or it sticks and we're in a good spot. I just cannot let them lower my life total. Like, I don't think they're gonna kill us with Fling. I think it'd be very hard to do it. But there's no reason why we open ourselves up to that avenue where we could lose to Fling, especially when we're discarding cards. So here's another fire, and I think we're lower on cards, so we just like take it here. Yeah, let's take it. We're on 15, like, fine. set the thing on 1 and pass. Super easy turn. I might have a Tide here. I think this is why I thought about it. I can't really see if I have a Tide. But they tapped... I think I have a Tide here. That's a 4 spike. So I did not discard the 4 spike over the Nev disc, because another thing is that I know their deck is extremely lean, and 4 spike's extremely powerful, I think, in this matchup. They play a Mountain, and then what? Yeah, I think the reason why I did it... Oh, I was talking about 4 spike. Yeah. So 4 spike's really good in this matchup because it just will like get their gush, get their something. You know, it will happen, right? When we come down to like the big battle here, the 4 spike will be relevant. So also taxing their mana is like very important in this matchup. As I said, like this matchup's all about mana, right? So even if 4 spike doesn't counter the spell, like forcing them to tap down low when I know like they're not gonna have more lands than we do, like is extremely relevant. Which is why I pitch the Nev disc over the 4 spike. I think I could have tied it earlier. I don't know if I have tied. Let me take a look. There's 2 counterspell, 3 counterspell. That I do have tied. Yeah, I could have tied it last turn, but I figured I was not on any like serious clock here. I have a powder keg, you know. So they play a gush, and I play a 4 spike there. It's just too good of a target to hit. I think them drawing 2 cards actually doesn't matter super much. But like it's just like a really good use of 4 spike, so I gotta do it. The longer this game goes, the better it is for me. So I'm just like not pressured to do anything. Like there's no way my opponent can like make me do something, because I'm the reactive deck here. So I'm just waiting till they go for it, and they're in no position to like force me on anything, especially with the powder keg. Here we go. Gush. Gush is good. I thought about it for a second. Because I was thinking if it mattered, and it doesn't super matter. What I do like is that they went down on lands. Like there's nothing they do here that matters. Like they're gonna try and go for it. I have ample counter spells, and as soon as they tap low, next turn I tide them and they lose. So Gush is fine. I just like that they went down lands. That's all I care about. All I care about is their lands. I see a Vision Charm. It's kind of funny to watch their hand now, because I didn't know what it was. I figured it was like a lot of interaction. I assume there's no foil. Like now foil is live because they bounced a land. So they stick the Dreadnought, and I think the timing on how we answer stuff kind of matters here. There's a mana leak. There is 3 counter spells, a Tide, an AK, and something else. So I let the Dreadnought resolve, because I have the powder keg. I want to crack the keg first. So here's a Stifle that I assume they had, and then they have 2 lands open. So we have a lot of options here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue and 2 colorless. 2 colorless matters because that means we can play 2 counter spells and 1 mana leak, or 2 counter spells and then 1 AK. So the question is, does AK matter? I'm just right now figuring out where the position of that card is. So Stifle, I think we just spend the mana leak here first, because eventually mana leak will be like a little less relevant. So we just wanted to see what we have. I assume that's what we're going to do. Yeah, leak them first. This keeps it pretty flexible. I can still AK if I want to. But you see here how like 4 spike is still really powerful, because even if they like if they tap out with their own leak and then try and like foil later, we still have a 4 spike to stop it. So we're mana leaking the Stifle on the powder keg. And here, like, next turn we're going to go for it. Next turn we're going to tide them. I hope so. Yeah, because we get to AK. Here's a land. Here's another Grim Lavamancer. Yeah, this is like the perfect time. I really hope you like tide them next turn, because that'd be like very silly if you didn't. I'm like a very passive player, so that's like a problem that I need to I've been trying to address. Land. Yeah, we got more lands than anything. Yep, tide time. Let's go. Tide. And then the way I time this is also very important. Because we have a stifle, here's a foil, and then we counterspell. And for 1 blue, I don't know what they can have. Yeah. So for people who don't know how Tide works, Tide has Fading 5, and it only goes away on the upkeep when it tries to remove the last time counter and there's no time counters. So just an important note to have. Because that means we can Stifle it on our upkeep. We don't have to do it this turn because we're down to 2 mana. So then what I do here is I exile the blue lands, then pass the move phases. I don't think it really matters because now that I've won the exchange, but it's just something that I, make sure to do. Exile both. Now we're down to 1. And no matter what they do, we're pretty locked. Definitely shouldn't have played the ring there. Because now in upkeep, we have the Fading trigger, and then we remove that to exile the Barbarian ring, and now there's 0 counters on it. It's going to leave. Yep, I take 2. Then afterwards, stifle the LTB trigger. Boop. So all those cards are now exiled, and pass the turn. I probably could have animated the Fairy Conclave, but it doesn't super matter, I think. Oh wait, I think that was me indicating that I was passing priority back. So gotta start turning the corner soon, and here's the part where quicksand matters. They forgot to have quicksand, but didn't think about quicksand. So then they attack, and then we quicksand the Grim Lavamancer. Yep. Sorry, buddy. I am heartless. Yeah, it hits the attackers. And then another AK, draw 3 cards. And it's so important in this matchup. I know we're in a very good position, but there's no reason why we give them any quarter, right? We're playing for top 8 or whatever, Every game matters. You have to play every game with the same rigor. So just keep animating our lands. They updated. Finally updated my life total. Yeah, okay. I think we could cut this because they lose here. I think they scoop. Yeah, here's a fire. That puts them down to 4, and then we just counterspell it with our many, many counterspells. My 4 spike. Oh, I actually can't see the life total, which is my problem of having this camera up here. But we're gonna win. We got this. Go for lethal. They lose another life. That's why I also don't like the land base in that deck, because it's just Sly and other aggro decks are very strong in this format. So any lands that leak life is very, very important. All right, so game 2. Our sideboarding strategy here, I brought in that was a little fast. I thought about chill for a second, but I don't really care about their fling or their bolt or their fire ice too much, or the Grim Lava Mancer. It does hit their red blast, but like, eh. I think I thought about bringing the blue blast just to answer the red blast. Yeah, there it is. You can see it. The annuls are very good. I thought about the blue blast. I think. I don't think I bring in blue lands. I don't think I bring in the blue blast, just because like, it seems kind of bad. Seems kind of bad to just like only answer their red blast. And I think in this matchup I cut the impulses, and then I keep like factor fictions. There's also a dominate. The dominate's good against taking the well, I did bring in the blue blast. I think I don't. I think I put it down and then like I don't do it. Oh, I have a misdirection too. Yeah, the misdirection is going to be very clutch here. So we cut the Nev disc. We cut I think some impulses. But yeah, this game is decided by like resource matters a lot. Less so like digging, because a lot of my cards lines up pretty well against like what they do. So playing the long game is kind of important. So I cut one Force Spike. I left the other one there, just because on the draw, I think I might bring it back in actually, because on the draw they can go land Stifle Knot, and we really want to be able to land Force Spike it. The counter spell is a little harder to resolve in this position on the draw. We're a little laggy here. Yeah, so I think that's all I brought in. And then we'll go to, yeah. I think I was gesturing. They're going first. They can go first. Duress Crew. Worcester. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. I'm like casting my own game now. Which is a little vain, I think. But I feel like this game's like pretty good to like talk about stuff with. So it's my channel. All right, stop shuffling. Cut to the hand, because this game is the interesting one. This game is very interesting. I'm very proud of this particular match, because I do a thing to solve a problem that I've never solved before this way. All right, show us the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put down 7 Floruses. Put down 7 Decades. Okay, Force Spike, Island, Mana Leak, AK, and I didn't see the rest of the cards. But we were good because we have the Force Spike. We're insulated from the turn 2 Stifle Knot with the AK or with the Force Spike, and we have Counterspell. So one thing that people have talked about is they cut Tide in this matchup. But I actually think Tide is very good. Even though Tide is harder to resolve, because again they're so lean on their mana, I feel like if you're able to resolve Tide, they'll never come back. Even if the game goes a little longer, like even if you're able to snipe a couple lands and just like hold them off, I think it's very impactful. So I kept the Tide here. I also can't imagine like any other card just like being better than the Tide. Maybe the Impulse is better. But yeah, I was happy to keep the Tide here, because at some point, like in my mind, I can't reliably beat them with the manlands. I think like I don't think I can exhaust them, so I do kind of want to have a way to like push them to do something. So that's why I keep Tide in, but can be incorrect. They Impulse, and then they play something. This time they're hitting all their lands. So their hand has a red spell. I think they have a red blast. Yeah. Our own AK, the first one, draw a card. They Impulse in response. This was very interesting. I don't know why they decided to Impulse here. I guess they're worried that I'll like Force Spike them. Not sure why. But waiting for them to resolve their Impulse first. Yeah, them tapping out here, I think clears the way for me to Powder Keg. So, very interesting decision. So we have a little thinkies about Powder Keg because I'm concerned again that like uh, they just combo off next turn, but I see that they missed a land drop. So the ability for them to go like Stifle Not, then stifle my trigger, they can Vision Charm it, then stifle the trigger on their turn. Uh, but it seemed kind of low. So I was happy to just jam that here. And we also that 4 spike, so, you know, we're not completely defenseless. So this game is interesting. What's going on through my head right now is our hand has what, like 6 cards, 5 cards? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a Tide, we have a Stifle, we have a counter, 2 counter spells, and I forgot, a 4 spike, I think. So not that light on interaction, but eventually what's going to happen is I think we start exchanging spells more, and then I'm going to have a lower hand size. So let's see what happens here. I think this is a pretty big moment. I have a misdirection right now. Yeah, that's what it is. There's another card in that hand with misdirection. Oh, there's a cool thing I want to do that I can talk about. Yeah, I think here they try and jam. Which makes sense, because the longer they wait, the better it is for me. So they kind of have to, like, pressure me to have it. Oh, gosh. Gosh, it's fine. I'm not jamming next turn, so we're not going to counter Gush here. There is a thought about countering the Gush there, though, because we have 2 counter spells and a 4 spike, and I think a misdirection, right? That's all we have. So, as you can tell by my land base currently, there's only a colorless and a blue and double blue, so we cannot do double counterspell. So being able to counterspell now, like, is actually kind of good. But I think letting them draw 2 is like, it doesn't matter. I'm not like concerned about them having more cards. Like them eating my card there, I think is better for them than me letting them draw 2 cards. Because their cards can be like Vision Charms and Stifles or whatever. Like a lot of it doesn't matter. It's against me, that is. So here's a Dreadnought. And I think here is where we... Is that a mana leak? There's a leak, yeah. Yeah, so this way we have a spike still. So we go off of leak first, and they probably have a counterspell or a foil or whatever. Also important that they don't have any red lands, so I know that they can't red blast me. Ooh. I think here's a foil. I'm gonna pause here. Yeah, they put down a foil, leaving 2 red and 1 blue. Oh, sorry. They have 3 mana still open. So we do have Tide in hand. So I'm actually kind of happy, I think, to commit to this. Do I have Tide in hand? I don't think I do. I do. It's right there. So here, I'm actually fine to commit further, because if they counterspell my misdirection here, I can just Tide them. And they still have to think about beating the keg, right? Because they counterspell, and they still have to charm the Dreadnought. So I cast Misdirection, pitching the counterspell instead of the 4 spike, because we need the 4 spike to win this exchange. And also, like, we're not, as I said earlier, it's like hard to double counterspell a single turn. So it's easier to counterspell 4 spike than it is double counterspell. So I don't think I'm gonna use that counterspell like as easily, which is why I pitched it over the other kind of like lower value card, I guess, which is the 4 spike. That's why we did that. And then let's see if they commit, because what happens here is if they commit, if they counterspell here and lose, they know I'm going to Tide them, and they lose immediately. So that's why, like, I figured, like, okay, you have a counterspell and you're afraid of losing this exchange. Yep, you do was it opt or sleight of hand? Yeah, sleight of hand. Spell number 3, trigger their Phoenix. Just kidding, there's no Phoenix here. There is a Phoenix, a sharding Phoenix. Here's a Portent. And then I think this is kind of a good time to Tide, actually. So here's the interesting part that I wanted to talk about. So our hand has been severely reduced from 6 to 3 cards. And is that a tide? There's a tide at the very bottom. We don't have the combo. I thought about tiding their land here, but I also know that they have 2 lands in their hand. So I decided not to do it because I assume their hand is still like a lot of interaction. So that's the interesting thing I want to talk about, that the activation of the workshop here. Because now that we're down to 2 counter spells, one which is Force Spike, the other one being counterspell, is actually not that strong of a hand. When our opponent has done like nothing except for play the Dreadnought and Gush, and also filter a lot of cards. So I'm reading that they like have a lot of interaction, and the fact that they have the red for the red blast is even more crucial, right? So at any point, I think the caster for this event, or the casting team right now, said that they would have jammed the tide earlier, or will jam the tide next turn. And the reason why I don't jam tide here is because if they have foil or other ways to beat my tide and push me to fight over it, they will resolve the Dreadnought and I will potentially lose the game. So here's another attempt for the Powder Keg. And then this is interesting. So the first thing I spot is that they have a open red and open blue, right? So it's very crucial here because they have to spend the blue to stifle or vision charm it, and we crack this thing, right? So now there's no way for them to actually answer the Powder Keg because they tapped out their blue. So I assume there's another stifle in their hand, but I assume they forgot. Yeah, there's a stifle right there. So there was no universe they were gonna beat that Powder Keg because of the way they tapped their mana. They had to tap the red for the thing and then have double that, which we still would have beaten. But important, right? I just saw that and I knew I was gonna win there. So at this point, we could have still played Tide and like we blew them out of the game, which I guess will be good. We don't have like a counter spell or like an exile effect, but my thinking here was that their hand's still pretty big, right? They've played 2 shrimps, and all I have is like 2 counter spells in that Tide, right? So what I can do is I'm reading their hand. The first attack just now, they didn't bolt it, right? I'm reading their hand is nothing but interaction or cards that like don't impact the board. So if all I do is just keep firing up my manlands, attack them, I just rot their whole hand, right? Like none of the cards that they do, like as long as they're not casting spells in between each turn cycle, they're just like wasting all that tempo, right? Like I get to spend some mana, put some damage on them, and they don't get to cast any spells, which does 2 things. It lets us put pressure. Second of all, it reserves my counter spells, my precious counter spells, because I don't have that many, as I said. So I think now what I start doing, and unfortunately you can't see life total here, what I start doing here is I attack 1 and start pumping it instead to leave up mana so I can double counterspell, I think. That's why I did it that way, because if I did it the other way, I would only have 2 mana open. I could tide at any point still, but I don't think tiding super matters, just because like, you know, the more time continues, the more counterspells I draw, the harder it is for them to like win the game. So all I need to do is keep bolting them. And also a Fairy Conclave, which will be very important. So that's kind of like the thing I was like really proud of for this game, is like figuring out how to beat like a hand of interaction. It's just thinking like, well, you know, if you bolt my factory, I don't care. I have another one. As long as none of your blue spells or your red blast is doing anything, I'm like quite happy here. So I think, I think got a Portent. Very confident. Yes, take your Portent. Because they're also stuck on 4 lands, and I'm drawing infinite lands. Not infinite, but I have a lot of lands. That's what this deck does. It just gets a lot more lands than my opponent. Yeah, there's no reason for me to play Tide that can be easily answered by a single red blast. So we'll draw a card just to cycle through. Can't see what I'm drawing, but it doesn't matter. It just really does not matter. We have an annul, which is a really good hit, and then because now we have an annul, I believe we double fire up, 4, because now we have 2 counter spells. I think there's like a counter spell, maybe a Force Spike still, a Stifle, So Flores was watching this game, and Flores was like, you can fire that up again, right? I didn't know that was like an option. He didn't say it in the game, of course, it was after. But like I haven't played with these cards enough to like know how to like play with them. I was like, okay, it's Stifle. But also I wouldn't have done it anyways, because I want to leave my mana open. I'm just here to pressure them and make them do something. It's like kind of learnings from like CDH. I know it's not specifically a CDH, but it was like something I learned from playing CDH. It's just like as long as I have like the momentum, eventually like they're forced to take action because their life totals get so low, and like they're just put into like this trap, right? Because now they have to take action, and I've got like now my hand is really good. My hand has like a lot of interaction, so like you can have a shrimp. We fire off a null first because a null is like a good hit here. It's a good target for a null. Oh, at this point my opponent's also at 2, I believe, so very important. Yeah, they're just put in like a really difficult spot. They dumped the red blast, which is interesting, which signals to me they have another red blast. Here's a foil. Foil's fine. We're here to like get rid of that null. The reason why foil's fine here is because they need to tap the second blue source to do something, right? So now this restricts their interaction to the red blast and whatever blue spell they have, which is I don't believe there's any single blue spell that can answer. Oh no. Yep, red blast. Red blast is good. And then yeah, we just fire up the Fairy Conclave, handful interaction, and that's it. All right, so those are the games. I just felt like they were pretty cool to watch. To talk about like all the little strategy, like all the strategies I had in this, just because like I just thought it was interesting. So hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks to Rest Crew for hosting or having this wonderful event. Bye bye.